Welcome to, I almost said the Harvest Chronicles. We just rebranded to Beyond the Headlines because we are now talking about conversations that are currently ongoing. I was just listening to the news the other day and they're talking about the importance of languages. They were looking at
multilingualism.
Multilingualism. If you could just give me a bit of background for the benefits of our viewers. You are my mother, so I don't need that introduction, but please indulge me.
Okay, good afternoon to you and your viewers from all corners where they are. My name is Naoma Ngubane. I am the director of the Academy for Multilingualism at the University of the Free State.
Great. Thank you. So I actually have a question. You know, this multilingualism concept is fairly new, at least to me. I've been in higher education for the past 10 plus minus years. And okay, we speak a lot about multilingualism. And I'm so interested to know what pushed you into looking into matters of languages?
Oh, okay. Because we are talking about multilingualism, we'll move within the languages, right?
Okay, yeah.
Speak all the languages. So I've been passionate about languages all my life, right? When I finished high school back in the years before you were born, I wanted to do journalism, right? I loved languages. I excelled in languages in high school. There was a point when I was moving from primary school to high school where I would get 100 over 100 for a language. Then that's when I decided, let me just focus on any field that will allow me to explore my strength in languages. So I wanted to study journalism. I passed my matric. I attended rural schools, right? So when I came to Durban, then to join university, I applied at University of KwaZulu-Natal. I applied at DUT to study journalism. But the problem that I had was that in my school, they did not have Afrikaans. So I only had two languages, isiZulu, which is my mother tongue or home language, and English, which is my second language. So I couldn't study journalism because journalism, they wanted three, at least, languages. So if you are a journalist in South Africa, you must have your home language is English and then Afrikaans. That's when my dream of becoming a journalism actually, yeah, it died. So then my next option was becoming a teacher, right? So I applied at Edgewood College, which is now a campus of Edgewood campus of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Then I majored in isiZulu and English as languages. Then I became a language teacher after graduation. Then I started to teach at the high school, teaching English, stroke, and isiZulu and physical science. That's where my love for languages actually began. Then after that, as I progressed, joined higher education, I joined Mangosuthu University of Technology to teach academic literacies, which is stroke language skills in a way. Other people, they call it language skills, even though when we go deeper into theory, it's not about that, but it has to do with developing student academic language skills. And then I moved to Nelson Mandela, like I said earlier on, to teach academic literacy to first-year medical students. Then after that, I found myself here at the University of the Free State, leading academic multilingualism or Academy for Multilingualism. So I've been passionate about languages all my life. I feel that a language is the heartbeat of the nation. There is no nation without a language, and without a language, there's no nation, vice versa. So I feel that language is our identity as a nation. Language is who we are. Language is where we come from. Language is everything. Everything revolves around language. Whether we want to communicate across one another within our linguistic context, or even beyond that. Globally, you cannot move anywhere in the world without a language. whether it's the language that you understand or the language that you do not understand. But language is the cornerstone of everything. You talk about commerce, you talk about industry, you talk about ICT, you talk about all the fields. You could talk about medicine. Like I said, that I work in a medical school. The background there was to make sure that those students, before they become qualified or professional doctors, their strength in the languages is very, very good. That because that forms the background of their field. As doctors, they needed to communicate properly in the language of the university as well as in the language of their patients. So I feel that there's nothing that you can do without the language.
Interesting. But then I want to take it first to the classroom before we go to the professional setting. Because you are in higher education and you exist in a space where there's a lot of students from different backgrounds. I want to know, and this is one of the most common questions actually around multilingualism. You find 5 different students from 5 different backgrounds, 5 different provinces, speaking 5 different languages. How do you go about in teaching a particular language to those students? Do you try and cater for all 5 of them? Or is there a particular approach that you guys use? And why is it important even
that? Oh, that's a very, very good question. Thank you very much. So you talked about teaching, right? In higher education, the focus is about learning, right?
Yes.
So we speak more about how do those students from those diverse linguistic background, how do they learn? Because that's what they came from at the university to learn. So there's teaching and then there's learning. So now higher education for now, as it stands in South Africa, the language of teaching and learning in most university, when you go to the language policies, it says English as a de facto status of teaching and learning. The medium of instruction is English. But it does not mean that learning occurs in English. It says teaching. It means that you as teachers, actually, you are expected in a way to teach through English. But how do learning now, which is the important part, the learning processes, how do they take place? The policies do not say that the learning should be in English. So the learning should be in every linguistic resources that students feel comfortable, feel competent to use for them to understand the content better. So that's where multilingualism comes in. We're saying that while teachers are teaching in English and students do not understand, like saying they come from isiZulu language background, Sesotho, isiXhosa, and all other indigenous language groups in South Africa, when they get into an English only medium of instruction lecture room, you can speak for 3 hours, they will not understand. Yes, then how do you now make sure to facilitate the learning aspect? How do you make sure that when you put them in groups, they can actually support one another in learning the content? For example, if I come from a isiZulu language group and I can explain a content that actually other people did not understand, if that helps me to use isiZulu, I can ask a question in isiZulu to my peers and then say, angizange ngimuzwe kahle ukuthi i-photosynthesis iyini bese angichaza lo ngichazelayo ngesiZulu, right? But if that person also use English, it means that still have a barrier in learning. So I mean, in higher education, when we speak about multilingualism, we speak about multilingualism as a powerful resource, the students' languages as a powerful tool for them to utilize for their understanding, for their cognition, for the discussions, for the engagement, for whatever activity that will help them to understand the content that they did not understand when the teacher was teaching only in English. Whatever powerful tool, it might not be only one language. South African Sign Language is also another language. So we're saying that whatever powerful tool that students bring to the classroom, can they utilize that to actually support their learning and strengthen their understanding? So that when multilingualism comes in, how do we create that multilingual learning environment away from the English teaching environment?
But why is it important for us to deviate from this medium of instruction to our own indigenous languages, especially in the classroom, because I can imagine as a lecturer, as a school teacher, I only have about 45 minutes to complete a lesson. And now to navigate around different languages all at once. And it might not be easy for me. I might not be proficient in some languages. I make note, I make reference to institutions of higher learning in particular, where you find just 11 languages existing in one space. Why then shift from this one common language that we can all easily understand to this form of communicating?
I like the question. There are two parts. Firstly, you talked about limited time, 45-minute lectures that are imposed. I will say that are imposed because universities, when they design curriculum, they decide how many minutes they will afford a lecturer to actually facilitate a particular content. So the 45-minute, it actually means that it is assumed that the students that you are teaching in front of you are English monolingual. Actually, they do not have a problem with whatever you're saying in whatever language. It comes from that, that understanding that when you go to the class, the student that you'll find there are English native speakers. They will not struggling to follow the lesson. They will not struggle to understand the content in the language of teaching. But is the reality like that? Not at all. Not at all. So it means that even our the curriculum that are designed by universities, they depart from the understanding that our students and our teachers, they share the common language, which is English, and that our students do not struggle in learning in English. So therefore, that is why they say 45 minutes, you present the content, and then you leave the classroom. So how then did the learning take place? Not at all, within 45 minutes. If the curriculum was designed with an understanding that if you go to the classroom, you'll have multilingual students who are non-native speakers of English, whom they do not understand what to say, first of all, in that particular language, then the curriculum will allow you to have a more space to actually introduce that concept so that you engage with the student in whichever language that they understand. Not the language that you understand as a teacher. You may not understand all the languages, but they can understand better when they actually bring forth those languages that helps them to learn. That's one important part. I think that the second point, that second question you ask, why one language, one classroom, right? Why one language, one classroom? I think that that's a colonial view of education in South Africa. Actually, we come from that unfortunate past. One classroom, one language. That's a colonial view to say that why are we not allowing other languages? It's because, number one, we want to colonize. We want to colonize, especially higher education. We want to make it more English because we believe that English is a global language. That's another myth that we have. English is a global language. No, if you have traveled the world, you'll find that English is not a global language. Only in South Africa that we are made, or we've been made to believe that we can be global only if we understand English. I think that once we depart from those colonial ideologies, we can actually believe that if we depart from what we know in our languages, we become confident to approach the world. If we look at China, they don't learn in English, but they're very creative, they're innovative, they're very, they are globally, they are leading actually in economy, but they're doing everything in their language. So what about, where is English in China? There's no English at all. If in South Africa, we can also adopt it to allow our students to be very creative, to be very innovative. They can do that through the languages that they understand better, their mother tongue.
In China, English, they're a lot of our graduates into their country to teach English. But I wanted to ask then, and I speak from privilege here. I think I speak from privilege because I grew up at a time where I can literally speak any language in class. And was there ever a time really where if you responded in isiZulu, for instance, during the learning and teaching practice, you would be ridiculed for doing so?
Yeah, like it depends, for example, where you went to school. For example, I went to rural schools. My English taught, my teacher taught mathematics in isiZulu. They taught physical science in isiZulu. We will respond in isiZulu and whatever content, except in the examinations. But we managed to understand when they explained the concept in isiZulu. And they asked us to ask questions in isiZulu. It allowed us to conceptualize, to understand the content. Leave alone that we are going to write in English, which is another question, maybe for another day. But actually, the schools that I went to, when I wanted to ask this question and then I ran out of words in English, my teachers will allow me to say it in isiZulu, right? Because all other students will understand isiZulu, even the teacher himself actually will understand the isiZulu. So in those bilingual contexts where the teachers and the students share the language, it becomes a way much more better to facilitate the learners in both languages. Now, moving to multilingual context where the student will not understand, a teacher will not understand when the student asks in isiZulu. But if other student can actually translate it, it becomes more better. But the problem is that our languages, our indigenous languages, they're still marginalized. They're still not allowed in the teaching and learning spaces, especially in higher education. That is where the problem is. When students, they want to utilize their languages, there seem to be a problem with that, because lecturers will say, this is an English classroom, we don't speak any other language. In other words, leave your language, leave your identity, leave your tool for understanding out of my classroom. When you come in, you bring the language that you don't understand, you bring the language that you don't speak, you don't bring a language that you cannot even think creatively in. So who are you in the classroom now? Becomes a problem.
You've just said two things there. And the first follow-up question would be, what does that do cognitively to a student? If you want to have a voice, but then I silence you because you cannot speak in English, or you aren't communicating in English or Afrikaans, or maybe in isiZulu, what does it do to the student then? What are the dangers associated with that?
It silences them. That is why they don't participate in the classrooms. It's not because they don't think. They do think. They're generating these wonderful and beautiful and very smart ideas. But remember, they're doing that in the languages that are in the mother tongue. All the ideas that get generated in the language that we think of. Theoretically, it is assumed that we think in our mother tongues or in the first language or in the home language. So if you're silencing those languages in the classroom, actually you are silencing their voices. You're silencing their expressions and then their participation. Actually, they become, they lack self-confidence in the classroom. They lack self-confidence, they lose identity, because when you allow them to express them in whatever language that they feel comfortable, as long as there's a translator in the classroom, or if you understand their languages, you can translate for other students. And actually you're bringing in who they are. Actually, you're bringing in their self-confidence, and they feel free to participate, they have a voice, they participate, and they engage. And cognitively, it can take them to higher cognitive level of thinking, because you're saying that you can think in whatever language, write down those thoughts in whatever language, and then we can read it, somebody else can interpret or something like that. In other words, you want to go up to that best level of their thinking, and then you can translate whatever thought that in a second language, and the language that of the classroom for that matter. But if you silence that cognitive expression, they become so quiet. You'll just imagine, you'll just swear that there's no one in the classroom. You're all by themselves, because if you ask a question, they still think and translate the question from English into isiZulu, Sesotho, or Setswana, and then that takes a little bit of time. And how many minutes do you have? You have 45 minutes. When they don't raise your hand, you move forward. You leave them like that while they're still translating, while they're still struggling to put is and are. Because once the is and are is wrong, they feel so embarrassed not to say it in a grammatically correct way. So that also is a problem of translating in a proper way, but they still want their idea to sound correct for the teacher and maybe for other students. So that's the issue. If you allow them to ask it in isiZulu, they'll just go on and ask without thinking about the grammar, without thinking about and anything. They just express their languages because it's the language that they're mostly proficient in.
Interesting. So the second thing I wanted to say, the second follow-up question, more teaser than anything really, I wanted to say, I wonder if we still think in our indigenous languages. I say this because whenever I'm trying to think of something in isiZulu, I seriously struggle until I tap into my English drawer up in my head, and then something would come there. And so I wonder, with our generation that goes to multiracial schools where English is a language of the day, if we are able to think in our indigenous languages.
I will say that, like you say, now you're bringing up these two groups of students. The one that went to primary school or even preschool or even below that, they've been made to, I would say made to, because they come from maybe indigenous language home family backgrounds, but they've been I don't know, they've been made to learn through English and speak English as a first language, even though when they go home, they'll have other languages. That is why they are thinking, we assume that their thinking is through English, right? But sometimes it's not like that at all. That is why even the students, they come from these model schools. When you ask them to, if they understand, they might say, yes, we understand. But if you ask them what exactly to understand, there's no understanding at all. That is why those students, they come from model C schools. They bring this high proficiency in English. But if you ask them now, you check them, the test or exam papers, do they get A distinctions and all that? Not at all.
Okay. Okay. I do have a question though. So now suppose institutions of higher learning allow students to express themselves however they want, whether they speak in isiZulu, English, and whatever language. Let's just hypothetically say we succeed with this multilingualism agenda that higher education is pushing right now. And then you find students being able to communicate on pen and paper in whatever language. But when it comes to speaking, they can only express themselves in their indigenous languages. Isn't that a threat if we think about soft skills, especially in the context of the world of work? Because when we speak about soft skills many a times and in relation to communication, we mainly refer to, are you proficient in English? So don't you foresee danger if we follow a multilingual approach in our practice in higher education?
I get what you say, but I would like to differ in opinion as well, to say that we have been made, remember, we have been made to believe that English is the only language of professionalism out there. So that is why in higher education, we only prepare our students through these traditional ways of learning. They just memorize everything without even deeper understanding. They write for 50%. If I can just get 50% in physics, then I'll be ready to go and graduate and go to the field of work. In other words, we're preparing our students for employment, right? We're preparing our students for interviews. We're producing our students for being employed. But what if we were actually preparing our students for self-employment? What if we are preparing our students for leading economy from where they are, instead of graduating and waiting for somebody else to employ them? Because that's the problem of English, is it prepares our students to be employees. Because actually the entire curriculum, especially in South Africa, does not allow our students to develop these entrepreneurship skills, these skills that will allow, if our curriculum was that, then our students will be able, before they graduate, they run their own businesses. They don't need English for interviews, because actually they are prepared to actually create employment. Now we talk about globalization. We talk about taking our students overseas. Why do we need to prepare our students for overseas when overseas is not preparing their children for us? It's because We have been colonized. We've been made to believe that our languages are not good enough to actually produce knowledge through our languages, such that we become self-sufficient as a nation. We develop employment ourselves instead of expecting that other people will come and employ our students. That comes from that colonization ideology to say that we are not enough if we don't have English.
That's an interesting point, but I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, how does English as a language hinder one's entrepreneurial ability? Or how does it differ if you are speaking English? I'm explaining photosynthesis as a lecturer to you, as you mentioned earlier, as you made an example earlier. And then I come again, I explain the same concept in isiZulu. How does English rob you of your entrepreneurial skill, so to say?
It does in a big way. It really does in a big way, because even if we talk about that entrepreneurial skills, if they're still being taught in English, right? How much of that do I understand? 20% out of 100%. So how do I now take these skills and become and self-empower myself when even those skills, those business skills, those marketing skills, and all those, if they are still being given to me in a language that I don't understand, how will I communicate that knowledge that I gained in a language that I don't understand back now into my clientele out there without even, because there's a gap in knowledge, because when they come to me, they want to say it in isiZulu, but I learned it in English. Then therefore, there's still a gap there. So I believe that if our curriculum integrated multilingualism, whatever that we learn, entrepreneurship skills, business skills, and every skill that we learn, actually we're given in the language that will go out to the community. Remember, we're serving the community, not English community. We're serving our indigenous language community. If we're empowered through those languages as well, it will serve us much more better when we graduate in that particular skill that we want to learn.
Okay. I'm thinking again, so interesting that we are talking about multilingualism, but 99% of the time you and I are conversing in English. I wonder why we are not speaking in all other 12 languages that we have here in South Africa. I wonder, maybe try and switch and start practicing that which we preach, right?
Definitely. It was still colonized, by the way.
We are still colonized. So we are part of the problem, basically.
We are part of the problem, definitely.
But how does language for you, and in this question, I'm particularly referring to isiZulu, because you're a Zulu woman. How does it shape your identity?
isiZulu, it does in a big way. It does actually influence how I do things, right? And how I think about doing things. Like we just mentioned now that we still very much colonized. But if I were to approach you, ngikhuluma isiZulu nawe, before I can even go very, very far, what do you see in me? You see a Zulu woman, right? So I think that if it does influence how I react to think, to life in general. If I were to speak my isiZulu every day, I know that in other contexts I may little bit struggle. For example, I'm in Bloemfontein now. I become a strictly monolingual person. I only speak English because I don't speak isiSotho. And I have not learned to speak isiSotho beyond just the greetings. But if we were to be allowed to communicate in isiZulu in this context, university context, and even beyond that in the Free State, I think that my life would be much more easier. As I approach the malls, as I approach my colleagues, as I approach everybody in the university, how I get along easily because I don't have the linguistic barrier or the language barrier. I don't have to think twice if I want to express myself. So I think that I'm a little bit limited as a Zulu woman in a new province of whether I don't speak the language, it does actually, it becomes a challenge on how to access a lot of things that I would love to access easily. But because I need to cross these linguistic barriers, I need to try English. When I'm speaking to a Sesotho person who does not understand English, what do I do now? I need to think twice. How do I explain myself? Maybe using fingers or maybe using hands, let me say that, so that this person understands, because I don't speak English. So now I'm a monolingual. I only speak English when I'm here. But what if this person is not also an English speaker, a Mosotho speaker or a Setswana speaker? So I sometimes need to go back to my Zulu, right? And then I start speaking Zulu. I sometimes find myself, I have to go back to my Zulu. You find that the person maybe, understand this Zulu better than English. Then they said, oh, now I understand what to say. But in English, I couldn't get what to say. But I think going back to how does my home language shape my identity? I think that it does in a big way, where it allows me to, because not all the context will allow you to. But I feel that if I were to speak in isiZulu every day, it will allow me to socialize in a better way with everybody, express myself in a better way with everybody. I know that there's a lot of things that I will be able to do that I'm not now, especially in where I am, where there is very few people that speak isiZulu, which is my mother tongue.
Interesting. So it's not just about learning in class. There's a number of areas that are impacted by us not speaking our indigenous languages. That's how I'm hearing you right now.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely. Would you say that we are getting somewhere in South Africa, especially in higher education? Are institutions really taking multilingualism as seriously as they should? And if they aren't, what are the dangers associated with that if you look into the future and you think about our current students who are going to be world leaders or global players in the future?
I think that we are making interesting progress, right? If we think that where we come from maybe 10 years ago, I think that higher education and higher education institutions are really taking multilingualism very, very serious. I will draw from the University of the Free State, which is my context right now. We are making big strides in terms of making sure that our language policy as a document, that it drives everything that we do, especially in the academic spaces. Our language policy now embraces 5 languages, right? There is Sesotho, there is isiZulu there is English, Afrikaans, and South African Sign Language. That's a big stride when you think about where we come from back in 2016 and back in 2013, where we only had English and Afrikaans. Back in 2003, when we only had Afrikaans in the language policy as a language of teaching and learning and language of doing everything at the University of the Free State. Moving forward, 2016, then we're bilingual, to say that we're embracing English and Afrikaans. Now in the classroom, there will be parallel medium. Those who do not understand Afrikaans will then go to English lectures. Those who do not understand English will go to Afrikaans. That's a parallel medium. But 10 years later, we are a multilingual language policy now, to say that we do not only have English and African students at the University of the Free State. We do not have English and African staff members at the University of the Free State. We have students from all different languages. But however, because we are in the region of the Free State, where the majority of people are Sesotho and Afrikaans, so those are the major 2 languages that we're driving. However, because there is English, which is the language of medium of instruction, as per the DHET, the Department of Higher Education is still pushing for that. But however, we're embracing all those languages. This is why at the University of the Free State, we're saying, yes, there's English medium instruction lectures, but the tutorials, we have multilingual tutorials. When you do not understand the concept in the main class, you go to the tutorials, and then there are multilingual spaces where the tutors, they allow the student to ask questions in whatever language that they feel comfortable for, as long as they can internalize and understand the concept. That multilingual space is a very powerful space for the student to actually understand, express themselves, ask questions, debate, and do everything else in whatever language that will allow them. They can cross the linguistic borders. They can speak English, they can cross to Setswana, come back to Sizulu, do Xhosa, do Sesotho, and every other language is in between, so that they can tackle this challenging concept. What I can say is that I see a lot of progress at the University of the Free State. There are a number of projects actually that came as a result of the multilingual language policy that was approved in 2023, last year actually. One of them is a translanguaging tutorial system, which are growing in numbers across the faculties, and they're embracing them to allow the students actually to tackle this challenging concept in their languages out of the main language classroom. What we have done this year, we're also introducing multilingual pedagogies as an awareness now for those, for the lecturers to say that as much as you're monolingual English, you're monolingual Afrikaans and Sesotho, but the students in front of you are not like that. They think in different languages. They want to express themselves in different languages. So how do you now embrace that, even in that English only? That awareness to say that, yes, this is what the language policy says, but how can I move beyond that to enable other languages? So for the students to express themselves, to feel comfortable, to be who they are in the classroom. That also actually helps them to think and become creative. That multilingual pedagogies and we also have a number of interesting activities. We have Mokete Festival. It's an annual event where students and staff, they just dress in their cultural, different cultural attires. We celebrate through music, through poetry, through food, through just conversing in different languages. I meet you, and then I say Dumelang, you meet me, I say Sawubona. We exchange those greetings, and then in the process, we learn each other's cultures, the social. We hope that it also bring social cohesion, understanding each other's cultures, heritages, and we're embracing diversity, and we are making a big stride on that. And there's quite a lot and other number of activities that are also in the language policy. Not only they come from anywhere, we have made sure that it's in the language policy so that it actually enforces this multilingual culture at the University of the Free State. Other universities are following as well. We also have established what we call terminology, Sesotho terminology development and isiZulu, to allow students to have these multilingual resources that they can utilize in the classroom. For example, if we are talking about photosynthesis, a student does not understand it, blocks learning. If you don't understand, a student then can take this multilingual resource and page, and then they see, oh, chlorophyll in Sesotho is what? And then that's where they can now think and actually maybe make example from their cultures, because they can relate better if they understand it in their language, to say, oh, in my culture, chlorophyll is like this and this and this, then they can contextualize the concept better. They can even draw from their cultures the example when you want example, because the example actually tell you whether the student understand or they don't understand. When they can contextualize the concept, then you will know that there is understanding how it applies in real life situations, when they can relate it into their real life context. Back home, how we use chlorophyll. What is chlorophyll in Zulu? How do we use chlorophyll in my home, in my context, in my society? It only happens when I understand it in Zulu, right? So we are trying to drive towards that. And we're getting a lot of support from the faculties. We're getting a lot of support from the students, the HODs. Actually, I think that we are making very, very good progress in that. So I think that University of the Free State so far is leading, is the champion of multilingualism.
That is so great to hear. That is so wonderful to hear. In fact, I'm glad. That is my alma mater. I love the University of the Free State so much. Yeah, I was there during the launch of the Mokete Festival. I think this was back in 2021, 2022
Yes.
there. And I thought, what a brilliant idea. What a brilliant move from the institution. But what I did not see then were people of certain racial groups being a part of that event. And I asked myself, when we drive these agendas, let's push for multilingualism. Is it not only certain people or certain groups that partake in those, I'll make use of the Mokete Festival, in those events, for instance, while others just sit back and watch and not take part?
That one is true. So we have made very good progress in terms of that as well, making sure that when you talk about Heritage Day, when you talk about Mokwete Festival, it embraces actually everyone at the University of the Free State. There's still challenges here and there, but I hope that as we move along, we are going to tackle all those issues to make sure that entire staff community, entire student community, when you speak about a Mokete Festival, it actually talks to whatever culture, whatever language, whatever heritage that you bring to university. Even our international students, actually, we want to accommodate them when it comes to Mokete Festival, because we are talking about your identity, your language, wherever in the world that you come from, not only in South Africa. So I think that when we come back to the University of the Free State, in our next Mokete Festival, you'll see a lot of difference.
It's you having hopes that I'm coming back to the University of the Free State. Maybe the near future, who knows what the future holds. I might find myself there. Beautiful place. I love Bloemfontein. I love the university itself.
It's a beautiful city.
I may or may not return to the Free State. Let's just see what happens in the next couple of years. I did want to ask, though, with all these things that are happening from your office as a multilingualism director, as you said when we first started, how do you see all these things shaping the institutional culture? How are they contributing to the culture of the institution?
In different spaces, like I said, that we're promoting multilingualism in the academic spaces. We're promoting multilingualism across the university as well through the festivals such as Mokete, translanguaging in the academic spaces, a language policy seminar target for academic people, multilingual dialogues for academics to come together and tackle these multilingual issues. I think that we are doing not to sound like a little bit arrogant to say that there's a lot of difference that we're making, but we're making those smaller baby steps in a way, making sure that multilingualism is an institutional project. In small bits and pieces, it will come together very, very beautifully, very, very soon, to say that we have actually influenced academic spaces. We have influenced residencies. We have influenced professional staff. We have influenced academics. So all in all, we see multilingualism as an institutional project other than an isolated project that speaks only to students, speaks only to academics. We really see a positive future at the University of the Free State as far as multilingualism is concerned. Why? Because we have support from the leadership of the university. If you have support from the leadership of the university, there's everything becomes possible. There's so much funding that comes from the leadership of the university for the implementation of multilingualism at the university across all the spheres. We have support from the student, like I said before. We have support from the staff and academics. That is why I'm very hopeful that in the future, like I said earlier on, that University of the Free State, so far, we are champions of the implementation of multilingualism. And I believe that because it is the policy, actually, that allows us to do that. Then if people question anything, then we'll say, but it is the policy that is policing the implementation of the multilingual. Then people begin to accept it. Than if I come as Dr. Ngubane to say that I think that we need to promote multilingualism in the residencies as extended learning spaces. Then people will say, who are you? But if I say the language policy says that we need to implement multilingualism in the residencies as extended learning spaces, then people tend to be more influenced because language policy demands them to make those efforts in over time, I think that these small efforts that we do will actually make University of the Free State a multilingual environment for everyone to belong to.
Oh, interesting. So I'm thinking here as you're speaking. I love the work that the University of the Free State is pushing right now. Kudos to you, kudos to your team, and kudos to the leadership of the university and the staff and students as well.
Mm.
If you go to universities like the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where you previously worked as well, you find that as a prerequisite, you now have to do isiZulu. And I'm not sure, maybe you might provide a bit of clarity there. Is it some sort of cultural preservation of some sort, or it still ties with multilingualism? What's the agenda there? What could be the probable reason for doing that? And in asking this question, I will come back to the University of the Free State because I would like to know, shouldn't it be the case that we prioritize strictly isiSotho and Afrikaans as the dominant languages of the environment?
I will not talk much about the intentions of the University of KwaZulu-Natal when they introduced that compulsory isiZulu communication or conversational module. But I would think that it was one of their ways of promoting multilingualism as well, to say that if you do not graduate without isiZulu, at least by the time you graduate, whether you are in the medicine field, where you are in the engineering, but you are able to converse in a little bit of way in isiZulu, right? So that you better prepare yourself for a multilingual whether work field or environment. I think that it's supported. And as well, UKZN being located at the province of KwaZulu-Natal, it's one way of making sure that people who join the University of KwaZulu-Natal, they understand the cultures, because remember, we cannot divorce a language from the culture. You want to start to speak isiZulu, you tend to actually also understand what is isiZulu all about, where does it come from, what is the culture of the isiZulu people, and all those things. You want to also to understand that background that comes with the language. I think that the intention is that as well, and as well to produce these multilingual students for the work environment. Coming back now to University of the Free State, even though we do not have this approach that the University of KwaZulu-Natal has done, but we do have conversational modules that are compulsory in different faculties. We have isiZulu, a conversational module, Afrikaans, Sesotho, and South African Sign Language. It means that when our students start at first year, depending on the load of their credits, they can take it at first year, or they take it second year or third year. But before they've graduated, they have done one conversational module in whatever language that they feel. In other words, we are saying that one of the graduate attributes at the University of the Free State is multilingualism. Before our students graduate, they should have taken one of the languages that they did not do at school. That is one of the the prerequisite. You should have not done isiZulu at school so that you qualify to do it at the University of the Free State, because it's a very basic level, but it does not actually add too much workload to the student. It becomes 16 credits to the maximum, depending on faculties. But in that way, we are saying that we want also to produce these multilingual students as well that are ready for the multilingual global context that they are going to operate when they leave university, and also to introduce them to other cultures, other heritages, other languages that they were not exposed to when they joined university. By the time they go out, if they can Bua, it's a very good thing. If they come from African background, they can Bua the Bayakuluma, they can even sign, because we do have people that are actually cannot communicate using verbal means of communication. So to prepare our students for that multilingual global world, we do introduce those conventional modules. And our students, they love them, actually. They really love them. If we can actually offer more than two, but it's just because the curriculum is way packed. So we allow them to take at least one before they can graduate, preferably at a first year level.
That's actually very interesting. I'm thinking of the time when I was there in the Free State as well, at UFS. I remember taking a course in Afrikaans, which was fully funded by the university.
Yes.
What I did not know, though, was whether other languages are also catered for. Are they offered, like your Sesotho, your Zulu, all the other four that you mentioned in addition to Afrikaans?
Yes, we do have Sesotho conversational module that is offered by African languages. I've also enrolled for that this year because I wanted to join the movement and not to only talk about it. They do offer conversational module for staff that is offered virtually because we're always in the offices and busy. And then also there's another one for students that's become part of the curriculum. It's also funded by the university, but through the African languages. We do not have isiZulu yet because, like you said, we are in the Free State, so we're still establishing the Department of isiZulu, but very, very soon we'll have a conversational module as well in isiZulu across all the campuses as well.
What do you mean in the Department of isiZulu? Does the institution have a single unit that specializes in isiZulu?
There is African languages, right? The
Yes.
African languages will have Sesotho, will have isiZulu. If you also have another African language that will be offered as a program, like a degree, like what BA in Sesotho, it's offered within the African languages. So maybe I'm making an example. A BA in isiZulu will be offered within African languages, but there will be then a department within the African languages, a department of isiZulu, a department of Sesotho, and other languages. Yes.
Okay. And how far are you with your Sesotho learning now? Aribueng, Itla. Nagative. Aribueng.
Ay, kiyabua now, poti kiyabua.
I think I sound better than you. You know, whenever I attempt to
Oh,
speak.
no, it's just that, remember that language is much more used in context, you know. If you were to meet me, dog, and then say, Dumelang Dr. Ngubana, I'll say, Dumelang Dog Likaya, Kiteng, yeah, keep it like I'm not, yeah, I'm retake, I'm not. And then when you leave, I'll say, Tamaya Hantle, and all those things. So it's much more used in context and without even thinking about it, because it just happens there and there to say that you are communicating with that person. But now, because I'm communicating with you and I know that you know isiZulu, then I'll, by de facto status, I'll then switch to isiZulu.
Markanye Prad, you are in the
land because I went to a high school where my teachers were part of 1976 student uprising. So when they were given an opportunity to drop any subject, they dropped African like a hot potato. So there was no African at school. So they replaced that with economics. So that's why I graduated in matric without an Afrikaans, which then affected me after matric, because I wanted to do a career that needed Afrikaans. That's when I thought, oh, I don't think that it was the best move. Maybe they were supposed to add economics, but still maintain Afrikaans. But yeah, that's how they thought about it back then.
Love to learn it again? Are you still going to learn it since it's offered?
I would love to, because the majority of our not only community at UFS, professional people, staff people, just people around the Free State, and they either speak Afrikaans or Sesotho, or both for that matter. So it will be a lovely thing as well to at least be able to communicate in Afrikaans at a basic level, maybe to, when I go to the shop, I can express myself what I want in Afrikaans. And when I go to the garage, I can ask the petrol attendant in Afrikaans. For example, I'll say, Kikupa petrol. Then they know that I'm asking for petrol. You see? And then if I can also do that in Afrikaans, I think that I will have achieved a multilingualism for myself, actually, at a personal level.
Interessant. Ek kan nie maar ek probeer Afrikaans leer. So
you can speak.
What I just said is I can't speak Afrikaans, but I'm still learning. So hopefully the next time that you and I converse, we would have gone quite a mile. I have 2 children's books that are written in Afrikaans. I started them in 2022. I'm still trying to put some sentences together to this day. I think I'm struggling a bit.
I think that's a better way to learn a language as well, to go back to being a young learner of the language, than assuming that at my age I'll just go to learn a language, you know. But I love that approach.
Most
I
definitely.
mean, I'm the generation of the man cap the old.
A man what?
The man capped the old, right? Even now I still don't understand what it means. But we would be expected to then take that sentence into verleden tijd, meaning the past tense.
Yes.
Right. The man wat the water cup. Okay. Take that to toekomende tijd, the future tense, and then we'll translate that. But we don't even know what the sentence means.
Oh my goodness. Actually, that's a perfect example of what you were talking about earlier, of what you were explaining earlier. Sometimes we will learn, we will be present in class, we are going to learn, but what it's going to do is to use what our students normally refer to as the CPF, cram, pass, and forget, because we just want to make it. But really knowing what it is that we are consuming, you know?
Application of that later on, you can't.
Now I think there's dangers in that, because it means you get to the university not knowing, you exit the system still not knowing, no value to society.
Exactly.
No, and what does the future hold for multilingualism as our parting question?
For the Academy for Multilingualism, the future looks so bright. We have new projects that we will like to implement, especially in 2025. We want to go more deeper into the residencies that we felt that we have not been there enough to create the multilingual spaces now for our students, because we feel that it should not end in the tutorial system. It should not end in the main classroom. So when they discuss after hours, when they meet to discuss the content, there's more learning that takes place in those learning residence learning spaces. So that's our future. We're taking that one there. We have actually also published a book a book written in African languages, where we allowed our academics to express their research report in their mother tongue. The book, we are launching the book now in October. It has research papers written in Sesotho, isiZulu, Shivenda. We also went out of even extended the call beyond the University of the Free State. The book also it actually has 5 languages of research reports written in those languages. Academics, they were so excited when we say that our languages are not intellectual languages. It's a myth. Because if I give an academic an opportunity to write their research paper in whatever context and field, they will actually rise to the occasion. There's actually the paper in Shivenda. Now you tell me, if Shivenda is not an intellect language, it is. How would it express those research concepts if it was not an intellectualized language? So it's just a myth, is a way of saying that keep us thinking that our languages are not developed, so that we don't use them. So I would just take, for example, one of our big scholars in the intellectualization of African languages, Professor Pra. He will say that the only way we can develop our languages is through using them. If we keep on saying that they're not yet developed, there will be no time in the history, in the future, that our languages will get to that point. Let us develop them while we're using them in the academic spaces, in the social spaces, in the research spaces, everywhere. Let us utilize that. That is what the University of the Free State is trying to do right now. And the future, it looks so bright.
I absolutely love that. I have to conclude because we are out of time, but I actually wanted to pick your brain a bit. Maybe this is my second last question. Don't you think this should start at a school level and not particularly at a university level?
Definitely. I think that we have to meet halfway. In a sense that we have observed that when we introduce multilingualism at a higher education level, it might be a little bit too late in terms of the self-confidence among our students because they're not used to using their indigenous languages for what? For disciplines and for knowledge making and for knowledge production. So, but because there's this thing that we don't have enough terminology around African languages for sciences, for engineering, for agriculture, and all those disciplines. So, but if we started right at where you're saying, and right now we're using mother tongue for learning until grade 4. There is a push that in 2024, they started to introduce it in grade 5. And I hope that if you can start now from the bottom, at least from matric, and then you go down so that we meet halfway. Because we know that teachers actually are teaching through these indigenous languages. That's a fact. If you have been to township schools, it's just that they feel that they're smuggling them. It's not the right way to do it because they do it, but they think that it's not allowed. And they're not allowed to do that. They're just smuggling these African languages into the classroom. So if we were to allow it to happen, then there will be more terminology that will be developed. So what is happening at the University of the Free State? Thank you for mentioning that, because now we are partnering with Free State Education. All the terminologies that we have developed at the University of the Free State, we are sharing them with the schools now for that societal impact. To say that at universities, we produce knowledge. So what is the purpose of knowledge if it's not to bring change to our society beyond the university? So we are partnering with the University of the Free State. The future looks best at the Free State, because even in Free State Education, they were so excited to actually partner with us. We're sharing these terminologies with our teachers and the schools and the learners out there.
And you working with the education, I almost said ministry. I don't know why. That has been planted in my head for the past number of years now. With the education department, I think it signifies the important role of engagement, because I see that engagement move, which is a critical pillar of higher education. Again, kudos to you there. The last thing I would say is I've got this book here next to me, and I'm not sure if you will remember it, but it's a multilingual book that was written by one of the students at the University of the, which the university strongly supported. This is the product of the work that you are doing. Kudos to you, University of the, and kudos to any other institution really that sees the value of pushing this multilingualism agenda.
Thank you very much. Actually, that the book that you're holding in your hand, it's one of the projects called I-CAN project. I-CAN initiatives of creative writing in African languages. Creative initiative for creative African narratives, right? It provides students with an opportunity to express their creativity, their stories in their mother tongues. And then those stories are combined to that creative writing. It's an amazing opportunity. Students love it. Students from all fields. You'll have law students actually writing the stories in Xhosa, in Sepedi, in any other language. And I think that when those stories are used for developing academic literacies in the mother tongues, in the African languages, it becomes beautiful, beautiful resources for the departments as well.
Wonderful work. I love it. Dr. Ngubane, thank you very much for being with us. We truly appreciate all your insights and the wonderful work that you are doing. I wish you well for the future, and I'm hoping that one day you will be the president of multilingualism in South Africa. We will create a portfolio for you. We need movers and shakers like yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be given this opportunity. Sometimes when you talk about something, while you talk, we think more about how you can actually enhance what you're doing. Actually, your questions actually made me to think about a lot of more other aspects promoting multilingualism. Sometimes you're asking a question of something that we have started, but we're making baby steps. Now that you're talking about it, actually enriches my thought as well and my creativity moving forward. I'm not sure whether we have told your audience that you were my student back in the years at Mango City University. one of the brilliant students that Mango City University has ever produced. We are really proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.